Ready to go. Now we can begin. How tall is it? I'm a little taller. So. Welcome to the trade war fucking series. It's been a frustrating few minutes. We're going to begin with the first part. We're going to be talking about one of the major nations involved, and that would be Dubois. And how we'll do this is I will kind of read stuff out here. If I need to kind of go over anything, I will jump to this camera here and we'll kind of go over some of the stuff, and then eventually I'll probably have to break off to parts where I'll show you stuff in the computer. So when it comes to the history of Dubois from the year 300 something, whenever they began, to the 1500s, let's see what we can kind of piece together here. The understanding of all of that. Well, it's just, I don't know if it really matters. We're only going to focus on everything after, the 1500s. So the first page we will not go into. We don't need to. It's just, it can play an important part in the identification of the people, but as for this video, for simplicity's sake, let's just goddamn roll with the 1500s and forward. That's about 100 and whatever years to deal with. Now, one thing to keep in mind about Dubois going forward is their constant skirmishes and battles with the Rhonic people in the south. That's just kind of something that's always kind of going on. So, between Dubois and the Rhonic people, there's always a threat going on. Okay. We always have border skirmishes and stuff like that. You have the 𝚃𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞𝚍 mountains kind of dividing the peoples, and there's like a river and some other fucking rivers I think goes through, and I think Quran's down here. These mountain lands are actually quite important to the strategic, what's the word I'm thinking of? What those mountains can produce is the calcium ores. And those ores play a very, very important role in the understanding, like, with trade and resource management and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of keep that in mind, that there's always something kind of going on down there. Now, there was never really like outright like wars and stuff like that. Like a war was declared and we're going to fight the fucking Southerners, and it was never really like that. Another thing to bear in mind is the Southerners are Tauric, whereas the people of Dubois are Volure. People of Sans, they're called. Sans, Volure, that's just kind of that's like mankind. That's what their names are. I'll just kind of read that part. On Dubois' southern border were the conflicts with Rhonic peoples. They were frontier folk of the expansionist Tauric Empire that had settlements and frontier outposts on the newfound lands of the south. This was an area of contention would cause strife between the nations. Letters would go back and forth between Tauric high ducans and kings of Emir, where they would contest the legitimacy of the lands that were claimed, and whether or not direct conflict was needed. In the year 865 through 875, the border battles with frontier Tauric forces would then cease after a prolonged halt. A Tauric ducan brokered a deal with King Clothaire of Sans-Flin as the dividing line between being drawn up. They would use the natural borders of the 𝚃𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞𝚍 mountains, and this would ensure no more confusion or unnecessary conflict. Now, I believe it was in the 1300s that the Masonic order kind of got involved in. Was it the 1300s? No, it wasn't. It was like I think they pulled out and like, yeah, they were in there from the 1300s on to like the 1600s and all that stuff. So, The natural enemy of Dubois is the southern states, but they're Tauric people, so you'll kind of see that going forward with how the Tauric understanding is with Dubois and all that stuff. We'll get into it. 1588. So we're kind of jumping up to that point because Dubois was kind of prospering under the early dynasties of the kings. From like the 800s into the 1200s, and then the 1200s on, you would see Dubois kind of steadily growing under this dynasty. Very much reflecting of like early France and stuff like that. Now 1588 is a year that everything kind of changed. The year that led to the collapse of the monarchy. It was a tumultuous time that would bring everything in Dubois to ruin. And it was all created by a young man who defied his status and led a revolution that would free a people only lost to time. A young man named 𝚃𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞, who was born from obscurity, would lead a revolt in the city of Albion that would be the place where a strange encounter with an Aeon would change history forever. For it was Quinn that was chosen to lead the people of Valoran from captivity and enslavement and into the ancient ways beneath the 𝚆𝚙𝚎𝚎 mountains. His small revolution that freed many slaves that were gathered up after the conquest of Rotir. There's like a subcultural thing that happened in Dubois during this time in the 1580s, and so 𝚃𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞 is kind of like the Spartacus, right? He had this thing he was doing. He freed these people, the slave class and all that. Meanwhile, there was another person using the situation to finally destroy the dynasty that was in control of the country. Now, we're not going to go into the Quinn stuff, but there was many battles and a civil war kind of ensued. From 1588 is when it began, and you can just actually it's when it ended. I think it began a couple years prior. So there was a civil war between the aristocratic class of Dubois, to which they were all landholders within, but they weren't part of the crown. They weren't part of the monarchical kind of regime. That was headed by the three kings that were in Whitecliff. This kind of is one of those things where the people want to get their land back and not be beholden to some king sitting in a faraway place. That's this transition. The Hut Society kind of becomes its own fiefdom because of that. It's just, we want to rule our places. We want to rule our land. Now, they kind of, I go into a little bit of the battle that happened, but again, this is the trade war. Just know that there was a great battle that everything kind of came to a head, and it was in that year that the Hut Society, they won this civil war, and they were championed by someone named Armer. Now, people in Dubois, never mind. Soon the last remaining kings of Dubois amassed an army that would meet Valoran's cohorts in the field, in a place now called Rotir, and then that battle happened. And then, all that shit. The embers of monarchy would quickly rise again, only to falter from the fighting and backstabbing. In time, the Hut Society would establish wealthy merchants would take power. For it was the merchants that would pick up the pieces of the once crumbling nation and piece the land back together again. Now, the regions of the realm are pretty much intact, but they are no longer places ruled by kings, but rather merchant kings, which were men that capitalized on the destruction of Dubois by using wealth to establish a society that was encircled around their control of trade and markets. They would control the creation of all things and hold all powers of the working class as they created a society that was ruled by material coveting of objects and the basis that all their subjects would in turn be consumers. A self-filling system that would be known as an idea of capital, where the wealth would be shared amongst the merchants and governance, and society would strictly be controlled by the image of what would make profit. Though the merchants themselves would soon resemble that which they fought against. Soon the land of Dubois would fall back into monarchical state, and traders became lords once again. In time, Dubois would know all around damn it. In time, Dubois would be known all around Atria as the trader peoples. And they would hold much wealth and abundance of products and foods. And they would just be kind of known as like a trader's state, if you will. Like a place where you know, money is to be had and stuff like that. And loans, bankers, and all that kind of stuff. This is what Dubois would be known for. It's a very wealthy state. You'd want to go to them. You'd want to get a loan from Dubois. You'd want to like use their mass industrial strength that they could have. 1580 to 1588 would be known as the rise of Armagh. After the fall of the dynasty monarchy, there was a rise in the ranks of the 𝚿𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞𝚍. When the aristocratic group in Dubois began their rule, they would promise one thing: protection. Protection to the citizens who just saw the civil war that almost brought the country to its knees. Now their might, to which the promise would have been bolstered, would have been in the Knights of the Blight, a quiet group of knights that were established when the Blight took the realm of 𝚃𝚛𝚎𝚘, or as it would soon be called, 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚛, in the year 1576. Chevalier de Flaswy. No, the Knights of the Blight, they were the lords and protectors of the Blightlands and her borders. Men that chose the path of honor and glory for his land. In the land of Nosfota, Albidales, and 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚛, where the Blight has choked the land, are the Knights of the Blight. For many long years, the Blight has come and gone. It flares up and subsides, mostly without need to intervene. But there are times when it grows and spreads unannounced. This is when the Knights appear. In the service of the king and country, they follow the teachings of the once mythic and now heroic Calviu. He was a Saint Leon that founded the order in 1456. For too many years has the people of Dubois been at the mercy of the Blight until he came. So it was Armagh, I don't know why I'm saying French. It was Armagh, and it was the 𝚿𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞𝚍 to which used the Knights of the Blight as something as kind of, I wouldn't call it a crutch, but you can bolster people with that and say, like, look at us, like these are the guys protecting you, and guess what? We're on their side, and we want to make you your own landholder. Your lord should be someone that lives right there. Your lord should be the guy that has the most money in your area. Like, look at that, you know. They're trying to establish like a localized kind of governance that would be ruled under what would be like a fiefdom. You know what I mean? But you'll see. Now it was the 𝚿𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞𝚍 that would use armies of the Chevalier to strengthen their cause, to take Dubois back for the people, with the promise of landholders ruling their own respective lands instead of kings ruling over their people in their comfortable castle in Whitecliff. So it would be henceforth ruled by local overlords, with their vassals being in direct control of the land. For it was the vassals that brought the contracted land from the overlord under contract and in return to the fee. Okay, let me read that again. For it was the vassal that brought the contracted land, bought it. They bought the contracted land from the overlord under contract, and in return to the fee owed, they would provide land revenue or allegiance, and most of the time both. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go into a little bit of how it would work on the map. And so this is how we're going to do it. Now, I'm going to show you visually, then I'll just kind of run over in which the way that they kind of approach this situation. So, as we will say, let's use the color white. White. Pencil. I wish it would stop going away like that. And the color white. Testing, testing. Yes, but not fat enough. Needs to be as big as me. Now, as you can see, Sightlands here, Dubois, the big words, Scythia, Moran, 𝚘𝚛𝚎𝚘. How it works is 𝚘𝚘𝚘 has an overlord, a high lord, one that, what does that happen? Very nice. So yeah, I wish I could write in there, but I need the white color. Now, 𝚘𝚘𝚘 is the high lord, and he has the vassals underneath him. Dubois, high lord. He owns the entirety of the realm of Dubois, this entire region. But he has his vassals, and I'll show you where the kind of the vassals would be. So here would be, boom, 𝚘𝚎𝚎. In this white area is the realm of 𝚘𝚎𝚎. This realm, it would probably circle around and go like this. Da, 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 da. Boom. Well, okay, like that. That is the realm of Marleau. Close the gap here. Boop. Trace it to like kind of here-ish. Boom. This is the realm of the Trois. The 𝚘𝚤𝚎, I think 𝚘𝚤𝚎 would be like this. As you can see, he owns all that. 𝚘𝚤𝚎, he owns everything in this area. Nobody really owns the forest. The 𝚘𝚊𝚛𝚎, boom, that's his realm. Is that all of them? I think that's all of them. But as you can see, that's how the vassals would work. Now, the vassals here, so the vassal of 𝚘𝚎𝚎, for instance, he owes his allegiance to Dubois, the leader of Dubois. The overlord rented out all of these lands in his realm to these vassals. And in return, it's either, the easy things like fealty, commerce, and resources, wealth, taxes. That's what they owe to the overlord, as well as, it's a militaristic thing. So if Dubois here, this giant realm of Dubois, wanted to go to war with the 𝚘𝚎𝚎𝚎, for instance, it is totally possible. He would call upon his vassals, 𝚘𝚎𝚎, Marleau, 𝚘𝚎𝚎𝚎, Espoir, Detroit, the 𝚘𝚎𝚎𝚎. He could call on them. They would have to raise their levy forces, and it works feudalistically. That's the simplicity of it all. So one more example, we'll go to the 𝚘𝚎𝚎𝚎 here. So inside this red area is the land called 𝚘𝚎𝚎𝚎, and that is under an overlord rules this entire area. We're talking, hundreds and hundreds of square miles. Boom, you got the peninsula guy up here. Northern Passage. I can't read that real well. Let's zoom in a little. Boop. Whoa. Alary would have from like here. Travertine will be like that. Boismiel, like that. And this would actually be the land of Sienne. But as you can see, 𝚘𝚎𝚎𝚎's overlord, he has 5 vassals, and each vassal can raise their own armies as such for this realm here. And that's just how that works. So plain and simple, just like, well, who? So that's essentially how it works. It's really simple. It's just people, you have a landmass, and under that, your overlord, most likely the richest man of the merchant peoples, and you have his vassals, which own areas, the realms within the land, and then so forth and so on. And that's all it really is. It's a fiefdom. It's nice and simple. It's not complicated. I try to keep it as simple as I possibly could. Now, all the overlords would swear their fealty to the king of Dubois, in which it was our mayor who orchestrated the entire civil war against the crown. So we're going to go a little bit into him, just a smidge. And it was he who would rise to power over the overlords and the Knight Chevalier. Our mayor of Teen was a noble in the house of Aymon in the realm of Dubois. It's a small city, and he was just kind of an average noble. His rise to power was shrouded in secrecy, and none know how such a small noble was able to unite all the Sans people under the banner of freedom from oppression. Though when he took the seat of power in Whitecliff, he was quick to dispel fears of a new tyrannical monarch, for he ended all hostilities with Quran in the south, as well as declared all realms self-governed by the overlords mentioned previously. Then his creation of the Lord's chamber solidified the union of the lords in each realm and made sure their voice was heard. The Lord's chamber is basically like the committee. It's like the moot or whatever. All the lords will get together. It's the House of, what is it? The House of Commons in England, and there's the House of Lords. I don't remember. But yeah, it's just like all the people, the land rulers, will all gather together, and for the betterment of the entirety of the nation, they make decisions. And I'm assuming there's more to it than that. You know, like if there's issues in each a different realm, it depends on which ones are affected by it, that we might have to have some sort of conference in it and figure things out. 1588 to 1601. After the dust settled in the Civil War and the establishment of the Lord's Parliament was successful, our mayor made it apparent that Dubois and her people will no longer be just another nation that will be under the shadow of Tantrum or Illyria. In fact, when he spoke to the peoples of Whitecliff, he promised, quote, a nation that Atria would owe their allegiance to, not the other way around. So in the years following 1588, he made plans for the Dubois hegemony, which were laid out. Which were laid out as follows. His first order of business: no more expansion. He's kind of said, like, we need to chill out on the expansion shit. Dubois, the whole nation, from all the way up to 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚎, the heights of 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚎 and those islands, all the way down to the southernmost peak of 𝚃𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞, like kind of where 𝚃𝚘𝚎 is. There's the 𝚃𝚘𝚎 city and 𝚃𝚘𝚎 Bay. He said, no more expansion. We need to focus on building internally. So because of that, we need to end all conflicts. And like I said, he ended the conflict with the peoples of the Quran people. Now that wasn't like an outright like conflict where it's like we're at war, but it was kind of a pissing match and all that. He said, we're going to stop that. We're going to have the lines divided. Now, from that point, there wasn't a whole lot of conflict going on with outside nations, but they weren't on the friendliest terms with like Tantrum, for instance. So it's one of those things where his main focus was no more growth, stop fighting. I'm merely going to focus on political kind of maneuverings, if you want to call it that. Third one, build more coastal cities and increase infrastructures. Plain and simple, you need more places to people that are willing to trade with your country to have more cities located. You know what I mean? If you have more coastal cities, if you have more areas like that, you can incur wealth into which you can establish yourself with vassals and lords of your choosing, right? You can kind of pick the people around you to kind of help fund what is your country. And that's what Dubois was, and that's what our mayor was really focused on during his reign from 1580 to I think it's the early 1600s. Now, the fourth one, defensive structure updated on all strategic positions. Plain and simple, we need to be stronger, we need to be ready for anything, and that even means emplacement of camps and fortifications along the Macedonian mountain, the Isle of, what's it called? The Loire Isles. Those are a really strategic, important place. Like if we need to build the defensive structures upon those kind of areas, or all the way up near the 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚎 mountains and stuff like that. Rivers that come in past the 𝚃𝚘𝚊𝚛𝚎 in the north, below Upper Dubois. There's just certain strategic positions that would behoove them to strengthen and bolster because of the upcoming threats that could be happening and stuff like that. What is going on in Tantrum at this time? We'll get into that once we get into that country. The fifth one will be increase the pressure of the knights of the Blight in 𝚆𝚘𝚛𝚎. And so it's just plain and simple, like we want the people to see they're safe, so we increase the knights in that area to fight back the creatures of the Blight. Now this is kind of getting to the last part. With those promises, he would see his nation rise back from the ashes of civil war, and quickly did it rise to contention in the politics of Atria. 1601 to 1624, the ever-growing nation. Now, I'm believing that he would have been in his 70s by the 1620s, our mayor. I have to confirm that, but 1601 to 1624, the ever-growing nation. Now, our mayor knew the expansion of 𝚆𝚤 kingdom was completed, and the people could not fight another war. It was he who would grow the diplomacy between the neighbors of 𝚆𝚤. And while the same guile that led him to the crown and expanded the lands he used against the diplomats and leaders alike, sowing suspicion, provoking alarm, and setting nations against each other with every chance he could. His rule was seen as holy by other lords, from whom they believed the king had some sort of spell he would cast onto anyone in his grips. So he was kind of like, we can't afford to go to war. I understand this. And the political game kind of began. Now, bear in mind, trade going on. During this time, there was some halting, but in the growth from the 1600 essentially to 1625 is when you start to see his kind of trade growth. And let's kind of go into that a little bit on here. And recording. So here's generally what we're going to do here. By the way, it's hard to be serious all the time, so sometimes I might let some yaks out, but your grandma thinks that's fine, so that's where she's at right now, having sex with your cousin or whatever. Anyway, so here are the nations, right? This one is 𝚆𝚤. You should already fucking know. I hope to God you know that. Tantorum, Walendi here. You have the Fell that have all this. You remember that stuff, guys? Remember? Here's Lyria. They have all this. Right? Well, what about that? That's the Valens. Then, you know, Adriana has all this. Does this ring a bell? Are we ding-donging each other or whatever? This is theirs. And then Chattertiles. I think they have. And then a Trovies. Damn it. Okay, right? Ring and a ding-ding. Well, here's kind of what's going on sexually. So with 𝚆𝚤, we're talking about the trade that they would have. Is that image like crap quality? Yeah, damn it. I should have took a better picture. Whatever. A lot of their trade would come up through the coastal areas, right? So there are settlements down here. One, I think that's 𝚃𝚌. I have that other map, which I can't really put up because I got to use this. But anyway, so 𝚃𝚌 is a major trade trade city. Let me see. I think Orb near Morin, where the land comes in. Corset. Right here is a major trade city. White Cliffs, like the main one. That's the big ass one. Then there's kind of inland. So they have trade cities kind of established all throughout this area here. And I don't remember if it's hard to fucking see because look at the quality's crap. I can't really zoom in too much, but yeah, I think there's a city here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just outwardly, you know, out cities like that. I feel like there's one in here somewhere that I never really mentioned. Probably like right here. Yeah, there is. It's just I put an M over it, so I couldn't use it. So as you can kind of see, the establishment by our mayor, it was very important to kind of upgrade these cities here and to make them areas of trade. But once you get inland, so you have access through this riverway here, but this kind of area would be a little dangerous just because of the whole Quran thing, which sits right here. And the land of Quran is something like this. You know, that's kind of a dangerous area. And like I was saying earlier, the battles and the skirmishes that take place up here in the mountains, it's just, it doesn't behoove them to kind of mess around with these here. It would just require a lot. So a lot of their blockading would be through here. And you have Tantorum, which Tantorum isn't necessarily on the friendliest term as Quran. It's like a separate. Tantorum mostly has, through their commonwealth, you know, lands like Sarcia now, I'm sorry. And then Erazion. Like that's kind of more of what they're doing over there. So trade from here to here, which this is the city of Wraith, real simple. I think it's like a few maybe about a day's journey. I don't remember, going at 7 knots. I think it's like you could get there in like, I don't know, 6 to 12 hours or something. I can't quite remember. But then they have their city here, and it's easy for Tantorum and Dubois to do trading, and they really focused on that, when the relationship was still doing well, and the main focus for Dubois would be trade. But anyway, as you can see, this is like a more of a defensive city right here. Same with this one, because of this riverway. This is the main hub of trading. It's called Tree. It's hard to write with this. I think it's called 𝚃𝚛𝚊𝚘𝚘, Trini, or Trini, or Tranny. That is the main trade hub. It's a city that's actually so large. It's on 3 different. This is 𝚃𝚛𝚎, so this point is 𝚃𝚛𝚎. That point is actually Morin, and then this point here is Dubois. So the 3 major overlords share this trading center, and this is just a huge hub of trade. And also there's another one up here, which is called, is that 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚎𝚘? Yeah, 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚎𝚘, where actually you have 1 in Morin, and I think it's 2 in Dubois. So there's another kind of trade along the 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚬 River. So this is a major riverway, the 𝚆𝚊𝚛𝚬, to which trade comes up and down. And as you can see, it's just a main focus for Dubois to actually use in trading with Tantorum. And then also, through here, Whitecliff and Etrovia. So as I was going to, we'll get to the point where we're talking about the triumvirate almost. Not really going to call it triumvirate, but the, what was it, a trois? Or a toy or something, however you say that in French, where they kind of ally themselves with Lyria, Etrovia, and Dubois, become this kind of trinity. Now, that's the main focus there. So as you can see, trade is so easy to access through here. I think they even have up here, this is kind of where these are called the 𝚆𝚘𝚎 Mountains, and it's really impassable right here. So a lot of trade comes through Whitecliff, which is so close to the ports of like Ansar. What did I call them? Ansar. Etrovia. Look at them all. It's so easy for them to trade into here. So they come down and go to Whitecliff, and the land of Dubois themselves make them. They allow the merchants and the bankers are the ones who really run the country, right, under the rule of a crown. But in reality, it's like bankers and say it's capitalism. It's a capitalistic society. So I mean, trade through the nations of Tantorum, as of from like the 1580s up to the 1620s, was flourishing. And then they were trading with Lyria, another main one, and then they were trading with Etrovia over here. The Valakmir would come through here, which are the Valak Isles I've showed you up here, the Shattered Isles, Storm Coast. They would trade with Dubois. Places from the south would trade. The only people they weren't trading with was Lyria. Damn it. It was, whatever the fuck these guys are calling it, Quran and all that. But you could even see trade with Wulandia coming up here and trading. You'd even see trading with Adrana, coming around the coast and through the 𝚆𝚘𝚎𝚘 Channel up through the Iperian. Even nations outside, nations that are really, were trading with Adrana for a while, you're starting to see come down through. Wait, this is the Iperian, sorry. Into the Iperian and Sarvine Sea and coming up through and trading. And so the main thing I want to say before we end this is they're all trading with each other. Quite obviously, right? It's a huge thing of trade. This point is the most important, the 𝚆𝚘𝚎𝚘 Channel, the Iapyoi Sea, and then, let me just double check, it's the Illyrian. I called it the Iperian, I meant this is the Illyrian. and the Illyrian. This area right here is just a huge hub for trade. And Dubois themselves is one of the major players in the trade. I mean, they rival places like Tantorum. You know, Tantorum's this huge industrial place, and the one thing that they do that Tantorum doesn't do is ally themselves with their neighbors. So they get along with Lyria, they get along with Etrovia. They don't get along with these guys, sure, but if they get along with Tantorum, the Volandi's kind of like this unstable place. But if they can somehow trade with 𝚆𝚊, well, through trading with 𝚆𝚊, maybe they can, the 𝚆𝚊 and the Illyrians are kind of buddy-buddy. So why not, you know, find a way through the Illyrians to trade with the 𝚆𝚊, so the 𝚆𝚊 can bring it to the Illyrians, and the Illyrians can bring it to Dubois. Same with Adrana. Once Adrana's on the map, Adrana's pretty friendly with 𝚆𝚊. It's another thing they can ship out from Adrana. So trade amongst these people, very, very, very important. And as you can see, there's an ecosystem. There's a state in which everything truly matters and works with each other. So just wanted to kind of paint that picture for you in this section here.
A little bit on here. So you can see a lot of trade, a lot of things happen, a lot of things moving. There's a reliance on each nation. There's this person trading with that person. You can kind of see it can almost get fragile, you know, if the situation is right. Now, what he chose to do, what our mayor chose to do during this time, now keep in mind his feeling about the southern states and all that, and the Tauric peoples. He may have set that on the back burner, but he hasn't forgotten about it. Like the Romans didn't forget about the Celts, even though hundreds of years went by. Influence gained between Lyria and Etrovia would be his first choice. Now, they were not nations, but it was clear their hatred for Tantorum would mean they could have a potential ally to their sworn enemies in the south of Ansar, for they too were of the same Tauric blood. Our mayor took a chance on allying against the kingdoms of man because the ever-increasing threat of Quran was growing more and more in the mountain skirmishes of the Macedonian mountains. Though there was a ceasing of conflict, you know, very crude drawing, but just though there was a ceasing of conflict between this area, doesn't mean that the small clans of Quran that were scattered amongst the mountains, that were doing what they were doing when it comes to harvesting the 𝚃𝚊𝚘𝚘, this incredible resource here. And these guys in, what is the realm called? What's the name changed? I gotta make sure I get it right. The peoples of the Ķirvet, and even the Sightlands. So the Ķirvet would be in this region, the Sightlands would be here. 𝚃𝚘𝚎 would be down here, there's like a lake. Those kind of nations as well, we're all contesting for this valuable resource within this area. So that happens to be one of the major threats in that situation. I wouldn't say innocent people necessarily, but they basically are. People that did nothing wrong but are minors are getting caught up in clan battles and shit like that up here. And so that's still a threat. Now, the frontier battles are going to the breaking point in which Dubois could find itself involved in another pointless war. So it was in the year 1603 that the treaties were signed between the three powers. And from there, the promise of commerce, as well as lending of Dubois' formidable industrial strength into the constant threat of war between Lyria and Tantorum. They just chose to say, hey, Lyria, we can work with you, and I know that you work with Etrovia. So they kind of went through Etrovia more often than they go through Lyria. But if they get that trine, to which we have the three major cities of Ekerveri in Lyria, I forgot the one that's in Etrovia, and then we have the White Cliff, the ancient cities. These are the places to which this union would unite. Now, it was called the 𝚃𝚘𝚎, 1603. The shared mutual understanding that strengthened Tantorum would be a threat for the safety of Atria. Now, this treaty was more ideological than militaristic, but the views expressed were of Tauric oppression that when ramped up on the borders of Lyria they'd be threatening.
we'll talk about the Valens shit. Now, let's kind of go to the map a little bit and talk about the conflicts between Lyria and Tantorum and how that could have, Dubois' effect in it. So we'll get more into the detailed stuff when it comes to Lyria and Tantorum when we actually get to those countries, but this is kind of what I want to point it out. So the red territory is Tantorum and the purple is Lyria. The biggest thing to see right here is Aganu. Now, Aganu right here, this realm is what Lyria would call it, is a new land of theirs. Used to be a land of Tantorums. That was during the age of 𝚃𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞 and all that stuff. Now, this area right here is one of the original places of Tantorum. 𝚃𝚛𝚎𝚕𝚞, there's upper and there's lower. These are the Draconian heights. But this kind of little valley was the original place of mankind. This is what they lost. Their old settlement was in here. Now, that's where Bravon the Red and all that stuff happened. But again, we'll get more into that later, but just know there's a land of contention between them. Now, the border here on what I would consider the 𝚃𝚘 River, that kind of carves down through here, this is where the tensions are highest. So because of this side and because of the Lyrian takeover and armament of Aganu, there was a push during the first Valen campaign some time ago, and the places in which the conflict really happened were in like this land here. This is all like Bacoa. Cormanio is like, let me just circle it with white. We'll make it white, even though that doesn't make sense. Let's make them green. So Cormanio would be like this strip here. I don't remember the name of this river. It's like 𝚃𝚘𝚎𝚘𝚘 River. It's a really strange name. Raymir is this one. Lewivia is a tiny little one right here. Hormil is this area in the middle. I'll try to circle Raymir a little bit better. It's that realm there. And then Bacoa, obviously. Kind of comes up like that. Those are neutral territories between that are in the land of the Volandi, which is this entire area right here from below the purple to above the red there. That's all the land of the Valanders and stuff. But this is kind of where the major conflicts would happen between Tantorum and Lyria. So when talking about the aiding from Dubois because of this, this is the area of contention right here. This is where you'd see the no man's land right in here. Now, they're not supposed to be fighting in here anymore, but once the trade war ramps up, you'll see Tantoric presence entering back in to Cormanio, Raymir, and into Lewivia. To which, if they take this land over, that's closer and closer they can get to Lyria. Lyria can push from Aganu, and what does Tantorum want? Well, they want to push in to Aganu and force them out of this area to get their land back. Again, something that we'll cover more once we get into the Lyrian and Tantorum kind of countries, their own videos. But I just wanted to kind of point out that, there's a lot of tension here, especially in the late 1500s, the 1580s up into the 1600s. A lot of fucking tensions rising, and you see it come to a head right before the declaration of the trade war. That's when we start to see this really come to picture, and this area will be the most important area in the entirety of the trade war. Like, a lot of the waterways are important, because that's where trade happens, but it's amazing how much of the land warfare happens here. So just kind of wanted to point that out real quick and talk about that. So Dubois would find themselves being able to get involved in the situation by supplying this because it's your enemy, but you're not outright going to fight against them. This right here, this situation between Lyria and Tantorum would eventually cause a situation to happen in the south. And that would be the Tantoric forces coming out of the south. So it's a bit of a game to be played. But Dubois was, par for the course, I guess you could say. The understanding between Dubois and Lyria. It was clear the ever-growing threats of Tantorum were causing contention over the 𝚿𝚛 king, but it was also clear that the Lyrian king felt pressure of Ettrovian persuasion to be absolved into the empire. Dubois found themselves in a more fragile state than previously thought, but nevertheless, our mayor would find a way to benefit it for his people, to which the major industrial strength helped aid those soldiers that were placed in the frontiers against possible Tauric threats. And with the strength surely meant a victory for the Enochian nations, though in reality, our mayor was playing a different game entirely, for it was the alliance between Dubois and Etrovia he so coveted, for their favor would bring much wealth to Dubois, and the wealth meant the destruction of the southern Tauric people. And then from that point, 1625 happens. So you're starting to see Dubois ramping up. They, from the shadow, from the fucking ashes of a civil war that almost enveloped their country, did they finally grow to the point where on the political stage they were making things like they were affecting the other nations. They were affecting Tantorum. They were affecting things happening in the south, and that is their true game. Now, what is the main thing that our mayor wants for his people? That's the main question. It's like, what is his true intent? Like, what exactly does he want for his people? Or is it the case of like, how is it for his people at all? What has his heart? And that's the kind of point from which, we can't really go into now, but just know Dubois, the hegemony, right? The kind of showing that you're the strongest and you're the most right, you're the best kingdom, is growing in the hearts of the people of Dubois, the Sans people. Sans Florin. There's our velour. Sans velour. That is the kind of situation that's happening in Dubois, and their importance is only growing. And from 1624, we have the debacle of the 𝚘𝚊𝚛𝚎, and their involvement in it will become clear once we get to that point. But what I want to do with these videos is build you up to the point of 1624 with each nation, as general and as quick as I possibly can. So that's kind of Dubois in a nutshell. It's really quick. We didn't really go into too much detail, but I do want to kind of show here's where they are. And so the next video will probably be another nation. We'll see, whatever feels right. Would it be Tantorum? Would it be Lyria? Etrovia? Maybe it's another nation sitting on the other side of us. Maybe it's Etrovia. What did I call them that? Maybe it's Adrana. They're like, where's they at? Like, they're just quiet? What's going on? We'll kind of talk about that too. So the next one will be another country, and then eventually we'll have a breakdown of every country in the happenings, and then it'll lead us into 1624. So that's that. Bitch.